Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. First item on the work session is Wheaton Park Court upgrades. Rodney?
Hello. With me is Ebony Williams. She is the person that operates the Ruth Ann Road Summer Basketball League up at Wheaton Park. The league's happened there for years, but she's here to tell you about how it's growing and some of the goals she has for the league. What we'd like to propose to you is, after our neighborhood's first meeting that Councilmember McIntyre and Keller attended with me, there's some proposed improvements to the basketball courts that they'd like to make there, including replacing the backboards with a kind of a high-quality professional backboard, and also coating the courts, maybe even possibly adding some art on the courts in the future. So I'll turn it over to Ebony, and she'll talk about what she's doing there. It's pretty exciting.
Oh, thank you for having me, first of all. I run the Ruth Ann Monroe Summer Basketball League here in Hagerstown at Wheaton Park. This would be my third year running it. The reasoning for fixtures of the backboard and the courts is because they're very unsafe. We have 3 divisions, elementary, middle, and high school. And on both courts, there's a lot of, safety hazards. One court, the backboards, when the high school players dunk on it, the backboard rattles and it shakes for, a period of time. It actually affects the next shot. As a former athlete, a collegiate athlete, and a professional athlete, I understand, that means the world. I took over the league in in the middle of 2017 season. That's the first place I actually played basketball, when I was 9 years old. And some of the courts are still the same. The backboards are still the same. On the small court, it has a 9-foot rim or 8.5-foot rim, and then the other rim is about 10.5 feet. So right there, as a basketball player, again, that needs to be fixed, and it should have been fixed. I'm 30 years old, and nothing has changed tremendously in terms of the courts, especially for those rims. So it's really, really unsafe. And again, Miss Ruth was, my biggest mentor as a young age. That's why I just felt it in my heart to take over the league, because it wasn't ran the way I remember when I was a kid. So when I came back as an adult, it kind of struck, pulled my heartstrings a little bit. And I was like, this was an outlet for me, a big-time outlet. Again, just a little of my background. I'm a Hagerstown kid. I didn't go to high school here. I went to Notre Dame Academy in Virginia. I was very blessed through hard work, of course, and dedication. I was blessed to receive over 25 Division I scholarship offers. And just being around the quality of people that I was around and going back to my hometown just made me really realize that, some things need to be fixed, and, some things need to be of better quality. And I'm all about quality. I run a basketball skill development training business here in Hagerstown for kids. I moved back here in 2017, the same year I moved back. This is the same year I took over the league, and the same year I started my basketball organization, just because I felt like there was a need. And most importantly, I'm from that area. I grew up in Bethel Gardens. I've seen people like Miss Ruth just affect so much change in me that I feel like I can do the same for someone else. And, that's my biggest reasoning for fixing this course, just to give them something nice. Hopefully, we create more me's or more Miss Ruths, or, and again, that league is, I want to say 50-plus years old. My uncle, who is pushing 70, said he played in that league when he was 11 years old. So it has a lot of history in terms of, Rodney Monroe, Miss Ruth's son, and Dennis Scott. Guys like that played in this league. Guys like me, Darren Mincy and the Avery Careys, and, a lot of people that this league really, truly, truly means a lot to. We just want to continue it and make it better. And I feel like, renovations to the court is the first step. We want to put color on the court to brighten up the neighborhood a little bit. It has a stigma, but at the same time, it's a negative stigma in the neighborhood, but it was so positive for me. That's the main thing. And it's grown tremendously. When I took over the league, I walked on the court and it was like tumbleweeds because marketing or what have you, or the folks that was running it, it just wasn't up to quality. And within 2 weeks, I had 160 kids sign up, and we were able to, through local businesses, of course. Our league is free. It's free for kids. It's free for 8 to 17 years old. And of course, the adults are now trying to get on board because of how fun it is. We provide a DJ every Sunday and food vendors every Sunday. So it's really a great atmosphere. It's a melting pot of communities. There's people there last year that I couldn't believe was there because, of the negative stigma. And, if you're a company or a small business and you're looking to, support us and support what we're doing, we wanted to look nice. We wanted to look of quality, so.
Rodney, it seems that you've identified funding that can be used, and Ebony, you've raised funding on your own.
Correct.
Yeah, what's proposed is using $25,000 of CDBG funds to replace the 4 hoops, to coat the 2 courts with a colored, it's like a tennis court surface. And I think you're going to donate $5,000
Yes.
of funds that she's raised, and that would give us a $30,000 project. So she has very specific things that she's asking us to do. The basketball baskets and hoops are of a very high quality, so we would probably just use that vendor.
They are outdoor basketball hoops and rims. They are shatterproof. They're see-through. I went to Seton Hall University in New Jersey, so I spent a lot of time in New York City playing on their outdoor leagues as a college player. And I was just looking at the baskets and like, dang, these are cool. Why do we have to, in Hagerstown, we can have the same thing,
If I could just ask you about that,
Yes, sir.
First of all, I want you to know, I completely, totally, 1,000% agree with everything you want to do. So there should be no question there. But when I see $4,200 for basketball, it just seems a little bit on the high side. I just ask you to consider, for instance, I'm looking, the highest, what Spalding describes as their gold standard is $3,000, 72-inch arena view, all acrylic,
Can I see?
see-through. Yeah, sure. And I'm not trying to tell you what you should do.
Right.
But just that scene, when I remember playing on the basketball courts in North Potomac, and we had metal backboards and.
Which
and,
is
you know,
what's at Wheaton right now.
And that's not acceptable. I totally agree with you. That's what I had in the 1960s. I would just ask you to look
Into,
at other backboards. I understand that
Sure.
True Bounce has specific differences than any, and one of the reasons I say that, you may find, again, that looks like believe me, when, that's the highest end backboard price-wise I was able to find in a quick search other than True Bounce. And I was just thinking, if you found something that was extremely acceptable for thousands of dollars less, I'm not suggesting you spend less money. I'm suggesting you may find another use for the excess funds that you would find. That's
I mean,
all.
I agree.
So I'm not
I
trying
agree.
I'm not
No.
trying to spend less, I'm trying to get more for the money, that's all.
I agree with you. I reached out to True Bounce myself because before, you
We'll
know,
say, backboard, yeah.
Very
before,
heavy duty.
before I met Shelley and before I met Ronnie, I was on the quest to do it myself. And that's just who I reached out to
Well,
first.
You found what looks like the best backboard in the industry.
I-
But I'm just making the
True.
suggestion you look at it, that's all.
True,
But
yeah.
I commend you for what you're doing, and you know, Wheaton Park really doesn't have a bad reputation anymore, in my opinion.
I've
It's a
never
pleasure
thought it did
going out to
anyway,
Wheaton
but I
Park,
mean,
and,
you
The
hear,
more improvements we can make out there, I am all for it.
yeah, thank you.
I'm your biggest fan. And I'm not an athlete at all, so, yeah, I mean, I think that what you're doing is tremendous. So, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
For your vision.
The colors, are these the colors that you're gonna go with on the?
We haven't figured that out yet. Those are just kind of precedent images I found of what we're kind of thinking.
Yeah. We just want to, actually
Yeah,
just,
that's a big following, great.
exactly. And I was just talking to Ronnie that I know an artist named Keelan Gant, and he's an Hagerstown artist. And, you know, we played together in Summer League, and he's about to open up his art studio in Chambersburg, but he's a Hagerstown native. And I actually approached him about this vision that I had a year ago, that I was like, hey, you know, it would be really, really cool if we can get your art, because his art is very, I don't know, it just makes you happy, it's futuristic, great colors, it pops. So, you know, even if we do the sport court, make it one color to where it can be his empty canvas, that would be amazing.
We like public art around.
Yeah, I mean, his work is phenomenal. Like, I can't afford it right now, but one day. One day. So.
Okay.
So I think to finalize that, we'd probably bring that back to you and have you review that before we.
Yeah, I like,
Yeah.
I like the idea of having, you know, two different, like a red, like here, a green court and a blue court, you know. it's kinda-
I like purple.
You like
like
purple?
purple.
Well, that was Miss Ruth's favorite color, was purple.
Well, it's-
So, like, when you see us walking around the park, you'll see our T-shirts and we have purple logos. This is our logo. I got this created, you know, with the blessings of the family, of course, and has her face on it, and, you know,
It's great.
did a lot of stuff, so, spent a lot of money, so.
Thank you for all you do, and I second Shelley. I guess I'm your second biggest fan, if she's your first.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll
Yeah,
put
I
together.
mean, it looks like we're all in,
You're
just
good.
gotta figure it all out, that's all.
Yeah,
Okay. We'll put together.
Thank
the,
you, guys.
motions
yeah,
for you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now on to preliminary agenda review. As always, stop me if you have questions or concerns or comments. I'm sure there'll be a few. We have the executive session next week at 4:30, then a work session at 5:30, the regular session at 7. Councilmember Messner will give the invocation, have the pledge to the flag, the announcements. Meeting dates in May. Tuesday, May 7th is a work session at 4 PM. Tax rate and budget public hearing at 7 PM. The 14th, a work session at 4. The 21st, a work session at 4. The 28th, a regular session at 7. We'll have special recognition of members of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. We'll have citizen comments, city administrators' comments, mayor and council comments. We'll adopt the minutes of March 5th, 12th, 19th, and the 26th. Under the consent agenda, Parks and Engineering, the agreement for holiday display and the purchase of basketball equipment for Wheaton Park is under Parks and Engineering. Under the Police Department, we have two, window gutter repairs, JLN Construction and Healthwork Maryland for $89,962.40. Under Public Works, we have two Ford F-750s with saw spreaders and snow plows, Keystone Ford and Chambersburg, PA, for a total of $230,914. Under Utilities, we have Light Consulting Services, GDS Associates, Marion, Georgia, $53,000. Underwater, the annual service contract, Hawk Company, Loveland, Colorado, $14,179. Underwater, FlexNet MXU radio transceiver units, LB Water Service Incorporated, Chambersburg, PA, $24,750. And underwater, Ford Escape Sport Utility, Keystone Ford, for $27,284. Under unfinished business, we have the approval of an ordinance, the increase of water rates, and also the approval of an ordinance, the increase of sewer rates. Under new business, if we go down the whole way to the bottom, because I know you're gonna ask me, we're going to take off item O, because it was taken off before. A, the introduction of an ordinance, 2018 Land Management Code Amendments. We also have the approval resolution reviving parking facility rates and fees. The approval resolution addendum to the development agreement for 140 West Antietam Street Student Housing Project. The approval of on-call electrical maintenance services contract that'll run from 7/1/19 to 6/30/20. The approval of an on-call plumbing services contract that'll run from 5/1/19 to 4/30/20. The approval of fiscal year 2019 streets demolition fund agreement for the UIP / the Maryland Theater. The approval of sub-recipient agreement with the Maryland Theater for fiscal year 19, the SDF award. The approval of a fiscal year 19 Community Legacy Grant Agreement for the UIP project, or Plaza, and the First Host Fire Company. The approval of a sub-recipient agreement with the First Host Fire Company for fiscal year 19 CL award. The approval of funding through the Invest Hagerstown Economic Incentive Program for the Dolan Black Heritage Museum for fiscal year 19. The approval of permission for the Director of Utilities to lock in wholesale power supply pricing. The approval of an open container exemptions for the Maryland Theater. The approval of an open container exemptions for the Hagerstown, Washington County Convention and Visitors Bureau. And the approval of open container exemptions for the Community Education Foundation. Questions?
I have two questions, not really questions, more statements. Item J, the approval of funding through the Invest Hagerstown Economic Incentive Program for Dolman Black Heritage Museum for FY19. I would note, in our previous discussion on this item, I believe last week, I don't believe that we left the discussion for approval of funding for that particular item in FY19. And on item O, I think you said that that's being removed from the agenda.
Yes.
I don't recall, number one, I don't recall the direction for removal from the last consensus of discussion of the council when we discussed that last time. So it was pulled from last month's meeting, and now we're pulling it again from this month's meeting.
It was requested by the, by Chief and the owner to pull it last time.
Okay, so the applicant wants it all?
Yes, at this time, yes.
And there was no applicant request for this. We transferred over from a previous hold position. So there has been no further discussion with them. That was an error strictly on our part.
Okay, so just so I understand clearly, the applicant does not want us to proceed on a vote on that matter at this time?
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, well, then the other item, item J, it's on the agenda now for approval. And again, I go back to last discussion when representatives were here, and I was clearly of the position that it be included as it was indicated in our budgetary deliberations, this and both, I believe, the Maryland Theater and a couple of other items, as it applied to the position of funding for it in our proposed FY20 budget.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, you're back there someplace, I'm sure, right on, there you are. And Mike, you can correct me also. Whenever we agree to something in like the fiscal year 2020 budget, do we ever expend monies prior to fiscal year 2020? Because I see it all the time when we talk about CIP projects, that there's this money here set aside for this project that, we needed to, we'd already spent this money, so now it has to be accounted for in this fiscal year. So we do that in the past.
Sure.
Okay. That's the only thing, is the ability to be able to finalize this contract with protection, as Austin had pointed out, and Kristen had pointed out. Protection for the city of Hagerstown to finalize this contract and to get this building under contract and paid for by the Dolman Black Heritage Museum. So
the actual transaction has to be done before July 1st, is that?
The actual transaction should have been done by the end of March, and it wasn't.
The
So,
transaction from the
but I
city?
nobody, no. The
Okay.
contract of sale was to be finalized with all monies accounted for by the end of March, 2019.
But for us to be able to do it from FY '19 funds, though, we need to do it by July 1st.
Well, you could do it you could still account it for it in the fiscal year 20 as opposed to 19. But monies are available currently to be able to do that 108,000 now.
Yeah.
And if Michelle tells me something different this time,
Okay.
there's gonna be hell to pay.
Say that one more time, Mr. Mayor, because I think everybody's looking at me and I'm getting lost in the 1920 conversation.
Okay.
Hi. So-
There are, go ahead, Wilson.
So we have the fund, or the funding that we're talking about is from FY '19 funds.
Which we do not have fiscal year 19 funds in Invest Hagerstown of $108,000 remaining.
So we're gonna push that to fiscal year 20, utilizing fiscal year 20 funding. But we can, what I heard was we can do the transaction in fiscal 19 and earmark funds from 20.
We'd have to make sure the motion was written to protect us, and we would have to ensure that the fiscal year 20 budget was going to be adopted to include those funds. Basically, we would be saying in fiscal year 19, we're willing to go into a deficit, and that we would need to write those funds now and guarantee that the funding was in there for 20.
Danelle, how much money is in the fiscal year 19? Are you in here? Jill, are you in here?
$73,000?
So we're at 73,000. We just reviewed some applications earlier today, and so there's going to be a little bit less than that, around 60,000 or less.
Right, there's 2 applications in queue that could have a draw against the 73 of, in a range of 35 to 50.
I recall a conversation a couple weeks ago where the number was 225,000 that we could get our hands on if we needed to put in funding for this current fiscal year if projects in Invest Hagerstown, the 10 projects that were in the queue, all wanted funding, that we had the funding, we actually would have the funding available. Not currently in Invest Hagerstown, because we all understood what that money was and what was accounted for, but there are other funds that could be supplanted to make up 225,000, unless the city administrator told me the wrong thing.
There was, part of that money was almost 100,000, which was in Invest Hagerstown in one of those specific pots. Then in addition, we were looking at monies that was under economic incentives, under Jill's regular general fund budget. In the meantime, after those conversations, no motion came forward until last month to actually lift the money in Invest Hagerstown out of the rental rehab portion and to allow it to be utilized. We didn't earmark any of those as a committee, and we didn't move any other funding over right now. So everybody's continued to spend since that point in time, since nothing else came forward and was voted on.
Because they were lifted.
Yes.
The flexibility was created in there before the
Flexibility.
funds were expended on, and for me, you know, whether we're talking 19, 20, one fund or another, I mean, for me, it's a fairly simple thing. The agreement, and I'm looking at you, but you really don't have, that much to do with the language-oriented parts of this. But the agreement for, the transfer of that 108 needs to be established. And again, I'm looking at you, but you're not the folks that are gonna do that. And I realize that, when we sat here and we discussed and we said, look, at least for me, I have that interest. And I'm willing to set the funds in, just like we talked about for our budget, for FY '20. I have no issue with any of that, but it's real simple. There has to be some document of surety established for the actual transfer of those funds. And for me, I was good from that point forward. And so, if that document of surety is created, and I said this last week, where it's both a protection and an incentive, i.e. the protection is, that the applicant understands very clearly that if some action doesn't take place, whatever we describe that action to be, to move this thing forward within a defined period of time, the city takes the building and it sells it. And if it doesn't get its 108 back or 120 back, then that's a gamble we took. I'm
And I
fine
guess
with that.
that goes to my question I was attempting to ask last week and was apparently not very eloquently putting it out. Who's doing that and when?
Well, that's what I'm,
Because that's a conversation they should be at the table for, we should be at the table
Right.
for. So what are we approving
In a
right
week's
now?
time.
Because that's what I don't understand. Are the conversations there about the building? Is it an incentive? Are we gonna
Well,
give
I
them the
think we need
building
to
after?
have- we need to have-
That's
And
what I
and-
don't, that's what I
Right,
guess
and-
I'm not understanding
So-
about this process.
So for me, again, it was the surety saying, here's the protection, here's the language and now
I
the
hear
other
you.
side of that,
And I
for
agree
me,
with
as a
you.
single person on this council, it was as an incentive to say, look, if within that time frame you can bring X dollars of opportunity of fruition to this project within that time frame, you know what? Don't go back and give me back what I gave, because you accomplished that project. And I don't care what the language is. Let's say, we say, look, within 3 years, if you don't make something happen, we get the building back and we sell it. Period, done, end of agreement. At the end of 3 years, if you come in and you say, I got $500,000 from the state and federal programs to get this thing up and running, I say, great, keep the 120, thank you for doing this.
Yeah, we
That
don't want
is
you to
as
spend that
simple to
120
me
out of your
as I think you can make that.
I think that my thing is, so is time of the essence for the seller? Is that why we're trying, I think, can there not be an extension to the contract?
There has been an extension, there's been several extensions already to the contract.
So another one getting us to the FY '20 budget would be just another extension? So, I think we can't come up with this contract in terms in a week's time before we approve this money to go.
I agree with
to-
that.
Right,
I understand, that's why I said FY20.
Right.
When we had that discussion, because we understood we were balancing the FY20 budget with that money in it.
Right.
If the seller doesn't have an interest in allowing for that period of time, to conclude that agreement,
Yeah.
I can't help that, I don't know.
So when is this on the agenda? Isn't that how we normally do things? Now we understand we all need a contract, so it would be on an agenda, we would approve the contract and go?
yeah, that's what my thing, I don't know if we can put a
Even if the
contract
seller
together in
needs
a
to
week.
see that we've got the 108 in the FY20 budget.
Right, with an
I
extension
think
to the
that's a
contract.
goodish- I think that should be a good enough surety to the seller.
I don't care which comes first, just whatever is the majority of this group. And when I left the table last week,
The agreement.
my notes actually said,
Yeah.
complete the motion for the Maryland Theater, work on the agreement for the Dolman, and then come back and do the funding for the Dolman.
But the
That
funding's
was,
gonna be in FY20.
that was where I thought
regardless.
that was my notes.
And I would think that would satisfy the seller to see, that there's, no?
That the
The
money's secure.
the building's been sitting vacant for how long? I feel like we're making
And-
progress.
Right, and-
This is
you know,
good.
And at the 11th and a half hour, after 20 years, suddenly it's not, that seems real odd to me. It just does. I'm sitting here a bit confused, so, if there's somebody that has the ability to answer the question, as one council member, I'm more than
Okay,
welcome to
Alicia,
hear
you have the ability to
that
answer the
response.
question, do you not?
Sure do.
Thank you.
Sure do. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Alicia.
The building is owned by William Kaufman. Mr. Kaufman is a man of a certain age. He's an elder. He wants to sell this building. He had a deadline from the deposit for December 31st. So we've pushed this and we've pushed this, and because of his age, he wants out from under it. Our community wants in that building. We came for you all, we requested provisional funding back in December to see this happen. It seems to me, and I appreciate everyone's due diligence in wanting to make certain that the contract reflects a win for the city as well as for the organization and the community. but the organization has an attorney also, who will make certain, the same way they did with the $12,000 deposit, that it is a win-win situation for both the Dolmans and the seller. Right now, we could lose this building because someone else is interested in it. And so we don't want to lose this opportunity because, for lack of a better phrase, that you all can, around this table, have that discussion of what the terms are going to be.
But we're willing to have the discussion with the terms. I think that from what it appears, we're kind of allocating funds from a budget that we didn't plan on doing. I mean, we were ready to do that in fiscal year 20. So now,
But this request came even last year. I sent a request to this body for.
for 12,000.
And
That
then
was in May of
in
last year,
November.
correct?
That what?
May of last
Right,
year.
and then in December, I sent another request for provisional funding while we waited on the grant applications that we were putting in January for this very fund. I sent a letter to mayor and council asking for those provisional funds, and that we were already, the opportunity, as far as Mr. Kaufman was concerned, he was getting tired of waiting. And he's 80-plus years old. So it's kind of hard to get him to understand, let's kick this can down the road for
60
another.
days.
It's something that we can take to him, but I will assure you and promise you that he's not happy now. And he does have other prospects for the building. And I don't want to lose it. And that's not to pressure you all to make a decision, but this has been belabored for a while. I mean, last week, it seems as though you were still in the same place we were last week with no consideration of how does it get done?
And I have.
What are the solutions
I
from
think
this
that was
body?
the direction that we gave, though, was to figure out the contract, and here we are approving funds. I think that's where we're all
Right.
at, is going.
There's the difference.
So what happened to the contract?
I haven't been here quite as long as Mr. Metzner has, but in my years that I've been at this table, I have never once engaged with council to create an agreement about that they bring to this council to approve when it comes to a contract. I have never been in those discussions with them before. They've always put together an agreement that protects the city of Hagerstown.
Are they
and
doing
does A,
that?
B, and C.
Is who doing it?
Well,
we
that was
can't
the
do that
direction
until-
given last week, to come up with an agreement that protects the city of Hagerstown.
And here's
Now,
the
no
thing,
funds
you
would
all
be
need to come up with
released,
that
at least,
agreement
let
from
me
what-
finish, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No funds would be released until such agreement was agreed upon by this council. Now, because we can do things at light speed when we want to at this table, but when sometimes we don't want to, or we want to beleaguer an issue, we can do that also. I do know for a fact that we can have our council put together an agreement that protects the city of Hagerstown and also moves forward on this 108,000 before next Tuesday, to be reviewed in a work session next Tuesday by this council, if we want it to happen.
And I can tell you, Mayor,
I would be-
I agree with Kristen. So Kristen has put forth a proposal I agree with, so if there's one other person,
I mean, well, all I'm saying is not, like, for me, it's very simple.
yeah.
And I even, if we had something that said, within 36 months, if action hasn't happened, the city,
I think we all agree
okay,
with that
all
language.
right, that's what I'm
So I
saying.
guess
That's what I
I-
said, I don't think this is complicated.
Then the
at
next
all.
step is
I
you
think it's
all-
real simple.
You all agree
I
on
think the
that, we
incentive
take it
side
to our
is the more
council, and our council
complicated
works with
thing,
your council and
of
legal council.
You gotta be at stage
The same way they did
X.
with the other one.
That, I think, is gonna be the harder side. I think the important part is the surety side, which says within 36 months if action hasn't happened, but.
And again,
And that, I think, is pretty simple stuff
yeah.
to write,
And the organization is not without legal representation, so it can get done.
but the addition of this going from 20 to 19, I think is different for me. I think the surety agreement is a simple thing. Going from 20 to 19, I don't see what the difference is in being able to to assure
Use
Mr.
the-
Kaufman that, you know, that it's there. Like,
7 days,
I
July
just,
1 is
I
what
don't,
you're saying.
Right.
it doesn't have to be that, it could be June, whatever, what's the date of the budget we
30th.
approve? Well, June 9th or something, that we
May.
approve the budget. And May 14th, May 7th is the hearing,
May 21, what's the vote on the budget?
so when's the vote on the budget?
21st.
So that's all we're talking
We're
about?
talking 20 more days.
Right.
Well, hey, I can call Mr. Kaufman and beg him to
21
not.
days, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's,
I have a feeling that given the fact that Mr. Kaufman is so upset that if there was a buyer out there ready to put the money down within the next 21 days, it would have been gone by now. Given the fact that what we're telling you is, as early as next week, we're gonna have all the motions done, the contract signed, and the money available.
And again, once we get something that, from you all, that we give to our council, that he sends and takes to Mr. Kaufman's council, yes, he would have that assurance
Well,
that you're
Mr.
speaking
Kaufman
of.
doesn't even need
Yeah.
to see the agreement
Right.
between us, it has nothing to do
That's
with that.
different.
No, but our council is going to speak with his council about this, and he's gonna have to be able to say to them, here's when the money is coming in.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about,
Right.
yeah. So, I mean, you know, at that point, then that becomes, you know, that matter of our council talking to him and asking him, or, yeah. Yeah. So
well,
we,
because the contract between us and you doesn't necessarily, because
Uh,
once
we-
Mr. Kaufman
we've
has
been
his
through
money,
this.
he's good, he's done. He's done.
Yeah.
That's it.
He's basically
Right, he
considered
wouldn't
as a
need to
sales
be in
agreement.
agreement with what the contract between your organization and the city. It just, I mean, as long as he's getting his money.
okay, understand that we've just gone through this with the deposit. We have worked with him, but he has my number. You understand? I'm the one that gets those calls in the morning, in the evening, in the afternoon. So, I mean, you know, the only thing, and then because I stated he is a man of a certain age, he doesn't always remember.
Right.
So you understand, they're
Give
for
him the
the
mayor's
organization. I've tried, and he keeps forgetting, and he asked for the mayor's number 3-4 times in a conversation. I'm just saying that at this point, we've been here before with a deposit once before. There was an agreement. It didn't go through, it wasn't this difficult to get to that point. I understand everyone wants assurances, and of course, the organization has legal representation to make certain that it is workable for them.
Well, with the deposit, I'll just say about that, we had the funds to give the organization the money for the deposit at that time. And now we're trying to figure out, we don't have it in the budget for fiscal 19. We're gonna have to pull it from 20, but we're trying to figure out how to.
Yes, sir.
how to do that.
And I'm familiar with how all this works. I know how this works, and I know that at the end of the day, it's just one of those things where if we're gonna do it, let's do it. Let's do it.
This process has just been, and this is not a reflection on you at all, this process has been, this is not abnormal. You're over here chuckling and frustrated, and this is not abnormal. You're asking for a grant. We put
Abnormal?
together a contract. We present a contract. If everyone agrees on it,
We
we're
approve it.
good. I don't, like, this is not abnormal. The way this has come about has been abnormal. Like, so I don't, this like weird tension and how do we get here and it's taking too long, like, let's just put together a contract. If everyone agrees on it, we sign and there's a check. Like, this shouldn't be this difficult. I
It
mean,
isn't, so let's move on. We'll get
And
it
I
done
think
next
everybody
week.
around the table thinks that it isn't, but we're still not there.
Yeah, but we'll be
I
there
don't
next
think
week.
that it is that difficult
Right.
either. I mean, but I mean, in speaking with you last week, you know, I get that there's something that feels different.
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
I'll tell you
know,
what it is, it's very
what is
easy.
it?
This body reached a consensus agreement that you heard in this room last week of how we were going to fund it, right? That it was gonna be FY 20, we we're gonna use these funded programs. But when this body got its worksheet for what it was going to approve next week, it said we were going to do this in FY 19. So
So were
there was
you
this
guys
sudden.
not,
No, so there's this sudden awareness, we sat here as a body
Okay.
in front of our citizens and yourselves and said, here's how we're going to get this
one of
done.
your citizens too.
I know. I'm saying you as an organization. So that's what we agreed to in public session as a body last week.
Okay,
We
but.
got our
but
paperwork this week.
Was that
and-
predicated on the request? Because the request clearly states
Yes.
when the funds were needed.
I understand that.
Okay, all
So
right.
we reached an agreement of how we were going to get to that.
Okay,
And what we're reading is something different than what we agreed to.
okay, I
And
just need to know.
all I'm trying to find
I
is
just
a middle
need marching
ground
orders.
where we can get to where we need to be and adhere to what we agreed to get there. That's, and I think we can do it. I don't think it's that complicated.
Right.
May 21st, latest.
That's what I'm hearing.
Am I hearing that?
It doesn't become effective until June 22nd,
Right.
the budget. I mean, it'll be approved on the 21st of May, but then there's that 30-day effective period.
Mr. Kaufman, I hope you are watching.
But May 21st is the starting point where we can actually say to that individual, yes, these funds are budgeted, that budget's approved, and here's the timeline for how that transition will take place. Like
And so is.
And if somebody says, 15 days is too long, or 21 or 45.
Will you write me a check
Then I would
in
say
the
it's very
interim?
difficult to, you know what I mean, to push that, over that small period.
Well,
Why don't you come back and let us know, please, you promise, Mr. Kaufman?
I think that's better.
why
you
can't
know,
we just find it in the 19th?
At least,
You're saying it's
you
not
know,
here.
you're
Because then we
pushing.
would have to go into a deficit. So that would mean that our FY '19 budget that we had solidified last year, when we all came to an agreement and passed it, that means that we're going to go backwards.
To go forward in 21 days.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, it's fine.
I mean, if someone said to us
I
that-
will come back and see you if I need to.
If Michelle came up here and said that there was availability of funds, that it wasn't gonna be that it wasn't an issue, then I think that we would all feel a lot better. But again, like Kristen said, we're kind of going back on what we agreed to last week as a body. And so now we're like, hold on, wait a second, this isn't what we had agreed to. You know what I mean? So we were just,
Give me a call.
All right, well done. Thank you for your time. Please get it together.
And I'm happy to talk to
Just
Mr.
you-
Kaufman
you-
as well.
yeah.
Pardon me?
I'm happy to talk to Mr. Kaufman as well.
Are you?
Yep.
He liked that. He loves to speak with council members.
I'm happy to do that.
You will do that? You'll swing by and see him? Thank you.
Tell me what
Because
it
if I
is.
lose this opportunity, I'm gonna be swinging by your house all. Thank you, guys.
Chris?
Thank you.
Any other questions on the preliminary agenda review? If not, then Kevin DeHaven will come up for us, discuss wage study, union reopeners, and HPD recruitment. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that softened you up for this presentation.
We're good.
So it's fairly obvious, it's been quite some time since the city had a wage study. So I'm coming to you this afternoon, hoping that we can move forward in May and present you a contract.
What would we want to do? Are we planning on changing the wages next year?
Contractually, they're still locked in for fiscal year '20, it would be for '21.
Okay, so
They have requested an early opener discussion.
why would we spend money for a wage study in the upcoming fiscal year that's not budgeted when we can wait until the next fiscal year? Which, if you're looking for a wage study to be done, why would we do a wage study in 2019 to determine what the appropriate wages are going to be in 2021, as I understand it?
That would be correct.
That doesn't make sense to me. I'd like to know what the wages we should be paying in 2021 are in 2020 or 2021, not 2019. What's the advantage?
We had money budgeted this year, so we had a split funding source on it. So it would begin in fiscal year '19, continue through '20, and then the discussion would occur through fiscal year '20 about what we wanted to do for fiscal year '21. That was the original plan that we had discussed. So anything that comes out of the wage study itself would be utilized in fiscal year '21 if the council so chose to use that
That
information.
still gives my question about why would we do a wage study in 2019 to project wages for 2021 instead of doing it in 2020?
I think the original wage study was to address the
Compression issues.
within supervision and hourly employees.
So those are wages that may be changed prior to the contract for the unions, is that what we're talking about?
Yes, what I did, I had two options. If you look at the Evergreen Solutions proposal, and that was, you'll see that on the very last page, is to do the study for the non-union positions at 28K. If we studied the union on top of that, then,
48.
yes, the
So you're planning on doing the union next year is what you're suggesting?
well, we could. You could do both at 45K. They're going to give us a little bit of discount on it. That would solve possibly the police department's issues that they're having with recruiting.
Well, that's the question. That's union. So you're saying to me that we may be actually reopening wage discussions prior to the real wage reopener?
No. So I think in theory, for a wage study, the last time that we did one, realistically, once we got the results, we implemented them in phases. Much like what the county has been doing, once they got their results, they're implementing them in several phases. So I think that the real impetus has been, originally, we were looking to start this and do non-union, and then later come back and add the rest of the city. Evergreen was willing to give us better pricing, and they had current information right now, job descriptions. By the time we get this information back and had time to review and study it, we would be into next year anyway, when the wage reopener is in their contract, year 3.
I thought they were talking about a 90-day turnaround on this. Did I miss that? 'Cause I was thinking this
Okay.
would take a long time to do. But when I looked at their proposal, it seems to me that they were,
Yeah, and that was due to the fact that
Saying
we
it.
had the vast majority of our information.
Evergreen can conduct a compensation study within 90 days of the execution of the contract.
Yeah.
So again, I just wonder why we would be doing it in 2019 if we're not planning on doing anything substantially until 2021.
I didn't see a difference in the proposal that was written in 2018 to the one that they issued recently. And I think they're using the same language that they used for the wage compression issue. It was non-union that we had targeted originally.
But the wage reopener discussions occur in March 2020. So in order to have wage information prior to that, we need to do it now, or somewhere prior to that date.
Correct.
Okay.
And then one of the other things that has occurred in the meantime is through the legislation is phasing in and increasing all of our minimum wage over the next couple years to get to $15, knowing that that's going to have to be something that we look at and address within the wage study and compression over the next couple years as well. But yes, in theory, it would be better to have this information well in advance of next March.
So you, finance and HR, recommend this now?
I think, yes. We are at a point where several groups have come forward and are all asking the same thing. We were hopeful that if we had something from the entire group and the whole city at our fingertips all at one time, we could address it better and strategically plan
And-
Well, I think
better.
that's
And I
only
appreciate
fair.
that very much. The reason this all comes up to me is because I don't see the unions saying they want to have the reopener in March. They want to do the reopener now. I mean, am I not reading something right? The wage reopener request, currently we're in receipt of 2 requests asking to expedite the reopening of wage discussions. The wage reopener requests are the results of the fear that discussions during an election year may not be as advantageous as a non-election year discussion. Now, we did all this stuff in prior administrations and entered contracts knowing exactly when this stuff was going to happen. And the wage reopener is not scheduled to March of 2020.
Okay.
And
I
it's,
see
and
what
it's
you're
the
saying.
unions that are asking us to expedite the wage reopeners, and they're doing it clearly for political reasons. So I'm saying we don't have the wage reopener until the contract says we do in March of 2020. Now, I understand you're gonna wanna have the wage studies done before then, but we don't need them done in July 1st, do we? If we're not gonna have reopener talks until March. And if the discussion here on the table is that we need to do this expeditiously because there's a majority that think we should in fact have wage reopener discussions prior to March of 2020, then that's a different story. Then I'm all ears and that's fine. But that's my only concern is when we entered into these contracts, we knew when the wage reopeners were gonna be, and they were gonna be in an election year. And I think I completely agree with the wage study, because as everybody who was around remembers, that was a very hotly debated Springstead 3-2 vote to support Springstead, which I did, and will undoubtedly support this one. And there's been no time better for a wage study than now that we have the specter of arbitration hanging over us. Because if we have a wage study and we follow what the wage study suggests, then I don't think arbitration is an issue at all. And that's why I don't think an election year is an issue at all. The
Yeah,
only-
if citizens voted for arbitration, they should vote for whatever the wage study mandates.
That's exactly what I think. And so I'm all for the wage study, and I'm all for following the wage study. I'm not for having wage reopeners before March 20th, though.
And
And I
we
think
agree with
staff
that.
agrees with that.
And we always brought that as, that's your actual decision for the wage reopeners, that's not ours. Ours was just a holistic approach for the wage study itself, so we encompassed every group. As you know, on March 26th, we met with the HPD group, the union group, and had discussions on this. And we all wanted to come back together stating, hey, the citywide, we think this is a good thing for everyone because it looks at every group, not just one specific group.
And I totally agree with that.
Yes, sir.
And to go along with that, I might have pressured the two people, Mr. Spiker and Mr. DeHaven here, because I said, hey, when we look at fiscal year 19 at the current year budget and what monies is available, we have almost half of that money available in fiscal year 19 budget to use it. So if we do this and we can split it strategically, we started and pay a little bit in 19, a little bit 20. Even though the whole thing wasn't included in the 20 budget, I've already identified funding to cover that other half. I can easily cover half. It's doing the entire study in fiscal year 20. I can if we
I'm
go
fine
that
with all
route.
that as long as staff determines when the best time to do this study and get the results in relation to when we want to start talking about the wage reopener. And again, I'm only going from the fact that their thing said that they could have a turnover in 90 days. When I first saw this, I thought it would be 6 to 8 months before they would get us, and I thought now would be a very appropriate time to start doing this. But when I saw it would be a 90-day turnover, I'm thinking, okay, there's no emergency on it.
And Evergreen just completed the one at the county, so realistically, what that does for the city, they already had, as part of that study, they already had all of the position descriptions for the majority of everybody here at the city. They already have position descriptions for everybody at the county. And then we would be comparing the exact same groups for the most part that they did across the county. So it makes their work a little bit more efficient, I think, time frame wise, and is able to do that.
And the other thing to bring up, and I just want to make sure you can correct me if I'm wrong, I understand there is a great need to do something about the police scales. And I don't know if anybody's suggesting that we do that prior to the new contract. My concern is I'm going to make an assumption that if we were even to discuss that, one, it would have to be approved by the union, even if we weren't taking anything from anybody, just adding to other people. And two, I'm assuming Me Too clauses would come into effect immediately, and other bargaining units would say, you gotta pay us also. And that's going to be getting back down to when you renegotiate, whether you have Me Too clauses again.
So are we prepared, are we good with moving forward with the wage study
That way,
using
yeah.
split term fiscal year 19 and 20 funds?
No, I'm not.
No.
You're not good with the study, are you? No, I don't think.
Or
I don't see
overall,
those.
like the study
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah.
about if we move forward on the compression side and did the
No,
MG.
Chris isn't good with the study
We're
at
gonna
all,
do this
right?
study, then the political body's gonna go into discussion with the unions. The unions are gonna tell the city what they want. The union's gonna say, okay, or the city's gonna say, okay, you know, here's how we'll meet that, and we'll be 2 or 3 years down the road again, and we'll be in the same conversation. We do it sort of over and over that way, and we say it's because, you know, we need to meet some specific thing with some specific, you know, employment base, and then it just sort of follows suit. Even though we tell ourselves every time it won't follow suit, it will. And you can get rid of all the clauses you want, you know, and do all the studies you want to do. But that ain't what happens at the table. It's just not. And we can kid ourselves with these studies and these discussions.
That's what happened with Springstead, wasn't it, Kristen? I mean, we ended up following the Springstead study.
Oh, yeah, if you want to compare ourselves to 3 of the richest counties in the.
Oh, no, listen,
in the
I
United
understand
States,
that
yeah,
you.
that's exactly
that
what we
you
did.
totally disagreed with the study and disagreed with their methodology. My point being, though, the result of the study was it was at least a 3-2 vote to go ahead and follow it, and
Mm-hmm.
the unions desperately wanted it, so it's not like they, you know, rolled over and allowed us to do it. They were pushing for what Springstead.
I mean, I read these bullet points, and I don't know, Mike, if you came up with these directly, but, you know, these bullet points are things we'd like to say we do, but aren't necessarily things we actually do. They just aren't.
I did the bullet points, so
Yeah, me-
I
well-
can't be blamed for that one.
So is what you're saying that the study's a waste of money?
I'm just saying, bullet point 2, maintain a competitive pay structure that takes into consideration the city's fiscal resources. If we're saying we're gonna do a study, and we have binding arbitration, and we're gonna go by the study, we're clearly not going to do bullet point 2. We're gonna do what the study says as it applies to the arbitration that can be applied to make it happen, right? I mean, that's the reality.
That's subject to the binding arbitration.
What we'd like to say we do is, you know, we do that, you know, within the confines of, you know, that fiscal limitation, but arbitration is a new animal, that will have a clear impact on the ability to say that we can do that. Last time we did the study, you know, changing labor market paid in comparable regional organizations, I mean, we have a newspaper, you know, sending us a request saying you're not doing that. Then we have a study that's saying, you know, we're doing that, and we're not just doing that, we're doing that to down the road comparatives. And you know, so it's nice to say that that's, you know, what we'd want to do, but, you know, we have conflicting, you know, opinions on that actually happening. And that we're going to base it on individual performance. You know, we have contracts with the unions. You know, they're not performance-based. They are contracts with pay scales that say, you know, at year X you go up point Y. They're not, you know, we talked about this very same thing just weeks ago. You know, and I'll be the first to say, you know, if that's how we structure with bargaining units, I'm surely not going to turn to non-union employees and say, we're going to base you on performance. You know what I mean? You can't do one and not the other. It just shouldn't work that way within an organization, you know. And the reason we don't have that is because we recognize the predisposed equitable conditions that are created by those contracts. So it's nice to say that. And the last, providing consistent administration of pay policies and procedures among all city departments. When we literally just sat here and talked about 5 minutes ago, you asked a question, how do we address the police issue right away? So, we don't do that, we do it based in part on demand. And a lot of demand is driven by the very fact that we have entities to the east of us that need, the same thousands of that particular workforce that we need. And so we train and lose, and we don't review that in the context of the entire employee base as it applies consistently across all departments. We look at each department and say, what's the demand? The flip side of that is we have union contracts that say, okay, we met the demand for that department, now everybody else gets the same. And so, like I said, we can have that exercise, but, I don't think reality reflects the exercise.
I think his question is important. I mean, obviously, police have an important role. I think it's our job as government to keep our citizens safe, and with 19 officers down, that
I
has to
agree.
be a focus of this administration. I understand you raise one, you have to raise all of them, and that leaves you with headaches at the end of the day, I'm sure, but, I mean,
Well, you're not gonna do it in this next budget. You've already just done the budget, you're not gonna do it. It's not gonna be addressed in the upcoming year.
I agree, that's why I'm like
So it's-
wondering in my head, why would you complete this exercise?
I do the study.
You basically complete an exercise and then hand it to the next administration and say, here, we did this exercise. Go implement it because you're obligated to do so, because you got all these agreements now, that make you do it.
The reopener starts in March,
Just
when's the
apply.
contract up in July?
June 30th
June
of
30th.
2022.
Well, I for one think we should do a wage study, that's my own opinion, and I think we should have it done prior to the March date. I don't care when, as long as it's done in time for that. I'm the only one.
So we can go forward then with
Well,
nod of the
I don't know
heads
if we
just to
have two
pull the
others.
council then?
but isn't the wage study the fair thing to do for non-union staff too?
Well, that's what we're talking about.
That's, well, yeah, that's the compression
Oh,
issue,
yeah,
is
you
with the
can,
non-union,
all
that's
across
correct.
the board.
Yes.
I'm nodding my head.
2,
So you wanna split it between fiscal 19 and fiscal 20?
Yes, sir, that's
So that
correct.
would conform to Michelle's budget, yeah, I'll go with that.
okay, okay.
How much is it costing again if you split it?
$45,000 total, 19,000 designated in fiscal year 19.
And please don't misunderstand, my comments are not meant to be disparate against the employees, against administration at all. I'm just simply accentuating the realities of how we function as this elected body has agreed to function. Staff hasn't made any of these decisions on what that relationship is, and how we approach it. That decision's made at this table by this body. I'm just saying that you've got to marry what that reality is with what citizen expectation is. So citizens out there that voted wholeheartedly for arbitration last election
Right.
should be very clearly aware that in part by doing so, this elected body is going to have to live by the direction of the citizens to implement exactly what they've directed us to do.
Correct.
And which means at the end of the day, you have to accept that, that's what you're willing as a citizen to expend additional funds on to meet the necessities of those services that you talk about.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Looks like Michelle's gonna run out of time at the end of the meeting.
Actually, we could postpone the budget conversation tonight
sounds
since
awesome.
it's the only thing on the agenda next week, and we could just
Sold.
maybe
We can roll it all into one.
start at 5 instead of 5.
So,
Okay with that?
most popular staff person in the city today.
I typically hear the
Play safe, play court.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is one, this should get us up to silver.
Mary McPherson and Hannah Person are here with me from the Health Department. We have a proposal for us for a piece of property that the city owns adjacent to Mill Street. So for the sake of time, I'll just turn it right over to you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you giving us a little time tonight to talk about our project. My name's Mary McPherson, and I work at the Washington County Health Department, and this is Hannah Person. She works with me. She's been working with me on this project. I've been at the Health Department for 20 years, and one of my duties at the Health Department is to do child fatality review, which is cases that come to us from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and we review the cases of people who are, children who have died, and the whole goal is to figure out ways to make that not happen again in our community. So we have had 2 fatalities of kids on bikes. Both of these young people were riding bikes, and both of them did not have helmets, and that's a true tragedy considering that they were both under 18 years of age. So one of the things we want to do is prevent that. Here's some more statistics. Why are we doing this? Besides those couple of kids that have lost their lives riding bikes, according to the Centers for Disease Control, children and adolescents have the highest rate of non-fatal bicycle-related injuries. And almost 1/3 of them those kids are seen in the emergency department. Of the 51 bike crashes reported in Hagerstown, half involved bicyclists under the age of 19. That's between 2015 and 2018. 25 of those incidents, those kids were not wearing helmets. 25 of those incidents, the bicyclist was found to be at fault, 72% of the time. As I said earlier, one of those fatalities that happened in Washington County was a young lady that was riding down a street in the city and blew through the stop sign and got hit by motorcyclists. And then there was another young man this happened out in the county, and he rode his bike out onto the road and somebody hit him as he was coming onto the road. There was a recent survey done by the League of American Bicyclists. Many Hagerstown residents, many community members of the city of Hagerstown felt that more bicycle education was needed, both for the cyclist and the driver. So that's why, that's the why. Now, what is a traffic garden? This is what we're proposing to do in Hagerstown. A traffic garden is a miniature town made up of small-sized streets where children learn about roadways and safety. So these traffic gardens can be anything from just painted lines on a piece of blacktop to very, very real. They seem real, like real towns. If any of you have ever been out to Children's Village, they have one of these things for kids that they're like driving cars. We're proposing something for bicycles. We have a little video that we'd like to show, so you kind of have a real idea of what it is we're talking about.
It's on the About Traffic Gardens page. And this video was created by a woman who's promoting traffic gardens in the United States. She creates workshops to help kids design and create traffic gardens, and we felt that this video was just a good overview of what a traffic garden is. Scroll down on that page. I think it should be that page. Right there.
Yeah. So that's what a traffic garden is. It can be very simple, or it can be very complex.
And there are some examples that we wanted to show you, just so you get a better picture of what this looks like. Here's one in Seattle. This is a rather large one. It's just paint on blacktop. Here's one in Australia. This one, they actually have separated streets and, you know, traffic signals. This one's in the Netherlands. They have little cars for kids to drive, so it's like an entire streetscape. But we're thinking more along the lines of just a painted blacktop space.
So this is sort of why we're doing this. The bike, we're calling ours a bike safe play court. It's going to be focused on bicycles, and children will, through this experience, learn how to be better drivers and better pedestrians. The safety part is we're going to have a piece of education for the kids on bike safety. It's also a place where they play. More and more of us are more and more overweight. So one of the things Hannah and I do is we teach people in the community about cardiovascular disease prevention and, of course, getting out and exercising. It's really important. And the court part of it is that it's going to be on a piece of paved property. It's like a basketball court, only it's for people with bikes. So this is why we're here today, is the location that we'd like to do this is on Mill Street. The city owns a piece of this lot on the corner of Mill Street and Baltimore Street. The lot is close to and has paths that connect to the Hager Park, which is a place that there are bathrooms, and it's not a really high utilized park. So we're thinking if we are allowed to do this here, it'll increase the foot traffic through the Hagerstown Park, the Hager Park. And because it's on city property, that's going to mean that people will be looking at it. It won't be like an abandoned piece of property. People are already using it, so the city will maintain it and keep it safe for children. This is near the Bester Elementary School, which currently has an initiative for walking safely. I'm sure you guys have all seen the things that the city has done, the big mural that was painted under the bridge, and the health department helped put up some signs for that. Well, we didn't put them up, Rodney's team put them up, but I think we helped purchase those. So it just ties all of that together. And this is what Rodney and his team have put together, and what we can do on that lot.
So we wanted to make sure that it had various traffic features that kids who are riding their bike on the streets might encounter. So we have crosswalks, turn lanes, a bike box, railroad tracks, all kinds of features. We wanted to kind of maximize the use of a relatively small space so that kids could still, have room to play and to learn about traffic safety.
The Washington County Health Department has received funding from the Maryland Department of Health for this project. We have $12,000 for the paint that would be put down. We're going to run some summer camps with Girls Incorporated, and the whole point of the camps would be get the kids ready to be on the bike path, the bike court. Our funding goes from now until September 30th, and if we are given permission to do this, we expect that by the end of August, we will have our ribbon cutting and it'll be open to the public. Is that the last slide?
That's the last slide.
So that's all we have.
Great. I have a couple of comments. The first is probably a bit more selfish than the other one, the second. But the first is, Rodney, you noted that you had contacted American Little League since they use this for parking sometimes. I don't know what that means. Like how many, how often, did we get a response from them?
I didn't get a response, but I'm going to continue to contact them. Sometimes they park in this area. It's adjacent to the lot that's owned by the hospital. Usually
Right.
they park in there. There's hundreds of spaces there that I think they have some sort of unwritten agreement with them.
So the only thing I'll say initially to that is I would appreciate knowing, the sensitivities that sports organizations, youth sports organizations have I would expect we'd get a response from them. The second is, as I've spoken to different members of mayor and council on numerous occasions, you know, this is part of what was considered Site B, or Alternative B, of the most recent, the last of the 6 or 7 stadium studies we did, under consideration. And all I'm saying is we're getting that report back on May 7th. And I think it's, again, that's just my opinion, given that that was one of the top 3 sites last time in the most recent iteration of a study, that we may consider refraining from until after that May 7th presentation that none of us have been privy to yet, to see if that is even a consideration. This has nothing to do with the idea, because I think it's an awesome idea. And I definitely think we can find a place for it, even if it's not this at the end of the day in the city, or not that it can't even be tied into something like that. All I'm saying is I'd like a response from the Little League. They say, look, you know, great, whatever, we can park somewhere else. And number 2, I just think, you know, we're 2 weeks away from that presentation. And if it is on it, then I don't want to look at you and say,
Yeah, I understand.
hey, we're gonna, you know, because that could get, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, bogged down.
Right.
And there is an agreement on that property also. It's actually part of the Hagerstown Light Department property. It's deeded to 425 East Baltimore Street, and there's an agreement from 1988 or 92 with Meritus. They have utilization of that property until they sell that entire parking lot. So it's currently used as a, sorry folks, what we refer to as a strike gate. It's the second access point to the light department and utilized for that. So that's just some of the history for that piece of property you're looking at right there.
And for this to happen, there would have to be a contract developed between the health department and the city, and you'd all have to approve it, so we can wait and have that approved in May.
Yeah, but the idea itself and the fact that you have funding is, we should definitely make it happen. If not here, we should definitely make it happen.
That's a really cool idea. Thank
In
you.
the city.
It's neat.
Thanks.
I agree with Kristen.
We are applying for more funding through the Maryland Department of Transportation. Well, I don't know when that will happen, but September 30th is the end of this $20,000. And the next, if we get the grant from MDOT, that would start October 1st. So we could enhance whatever property we already work on or complete. So,
Thank you.
let me know if you have any other questions. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
An open container exemption for Listening to America community conversation.
Good afternoon, evening, I guess now. Yes.
Yes, good evening.
So we're here today to provide you with some information about a proposed new event that would take place at University Plaza in August. It's a large-scale event, which is why we brought it to you, and the organizer, who is here with us today, Mr. Dante Hayes, is requesting an exemption to the open container law. His foundation is called the Community Education Foundation. It's a nonpartisan, tax-exempt organization focusing on public policy issues. His foundation approached us, the city, about using the plaza for an event that's called Listening to America, that includes a conversation between a Republican, a Democrat, and those in attendance. The conversation would be followed by a crab feast with beer and live music. At this time, Mr. Hayes is proposing holding this event 2 times on one day, which is August 3rd. One event would happen 12 to 5, and the next, I should say, session 12 to 5, and the next session 7 to midnight. Each would accommodate up to approximately 900 people. Mr. Hayes is here today to give you a brief synopsis of the proposed event and to answer any questions you may have about it. Yep.
Okay. Hello, thanks for inviting me. My name is Dante Hayes. I'm the executive producer of all of the Listen to America conversations. Our mission is always to educate Marylanders and the public on policy issues. We try to be very nonpartisan, to take a phrase from Fox News, fair and balanced. So I try to make sure that we have a Democrat and a Republican to speak at each event. And what we try to do is make sure that people understand issues over political affiliations or parties. For instance, you know, we may just ask folks, to talk about Social Security or taxes. You know, how do these policies benefit you, or how are they detrimental to you? A lot of people, they vote based on political affiliation and not on the issues. And a lot of folks are ignorant on the issues, and the only thing they get is from the local media is what they hear one side and not the other side. So we try to bring the politicians together and have an interactive conversation. It's not just sit down and listen to these people talk. That's why it's Listen to America. So we'll have a moderator. Sometimes it's someone from our organization. It may be someone from a think tank. It could be someone from a news organization. And we'll just have a politician talk about a subject matter, one or two, excuse me, and they're open up with introduction. After that, the public can come in and ask questions every 30 seconds. Everyone will have maybe 2 minutes or 60 seconds to talk to the politicians or the think tank. We try to use entertainment, and during the summertime, Maryland Crabs, to bring people come out to listen to issues while they're having fun. If I ask somebody to just come out, and I've tried it before, come out and just come to a town hall meeting, come to a Listen to America conversation, and you put it out there, they ain't not coming out. But when I say, okay, you're gonna have a local band, we're gonna have some crabs, we're gonna have some beer, you can have some fun while you listen to these politicians talk, people come out because they know after the conversation they can eat some crabs, and you can't have crabs without being in Maryland. I live in D.C., but I'm a Marylander, so we got to have beer and crabs. But we also will have a food buffet. For those people who want to eat crabs and food buffet, you know, we're going to charge a minimum price. For those people who don't want to eat crabs and don't want to have all-you-can-eat food for the 3 or 4 hours, they can come in free. We're going to try to make it convenient for everyone. People who old enough to eat crabs, they will have a wristband, and people who are old enough to drink alcohol, beer, will have a wristband. Those who can't, they won't have a wristband. We're going to have our own monitors inside and on both sides of the gate, so folks won't be coming in there, trying to have beer and go out, because we're trying to make this a nice public safety type of event. And the last thing I want to do is have someone who can't drink go out and hurt somebody, and that tarnish what we're trying to accomplish. So we're going to be very conscious on people who can drink, and try to be very conscious and limit the amount of drinks. Even though it's for 3 hours, it's all you can eat crabs and beer, but we're going to be very conscious because we don't want this event to be tarnished by someone getting hurt in the community. I'll open up for any questions. Oh, and one other thing, the speakers that we're going to have lined up, the governor or the lieutenant governor, we haven't reached out to any of your state senators in Washington County, but as soon as we get the green light, if we get the green light from you all, we will ask, you know, one of your state senators and delegate to speak. And then on the Democratic side, I have no idea who we're going to ask, but we will ask someone.
You have
to,
slim pickings here in
Western
Maryland.
I'm sorry?
You have slim pickings here in Washington County.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know that because I looked on the internet and I saw Mr. Trump carried Washington County. I'm not worried so much about the Republicans speaking. I'm worried about who I'm going to have as a Democrat. I may have to have someone from a think tank speak. But like I said, long as I have equal representation and the media don't look at me as being one-sided, because I have to try to keep it balanced, and I am a nonprofit, so I got to make sure the big guys, IRS, not looking at me trying to be one-sided.
Have you done this before?
Yes, sir. We've done it in Baltimore City.
How many times?
Twice last year. Yes, sir.
I'm good with it. I appreciate your mission to try to get people to talk about ideas from a nonpartisan perspective. I mean, imagine that, using your brain instead of a political party. Imagine how great this country could be if we could all do that. So
yes.
I appreciate it. Yeah. That's been extremely nonpartisan.
I'm just going to tell you I'm opposed, and I'll tell you the reasons why.
Okay.
First, I don't think that this is the proper location for it. I'm not opposed to it being downtown somewhere.
Right.
But I don't think the University Plaza is the place for a crab feed and beer fest. I just don't. You know, look at the grounds of it, I mean, it's mostly grass. You know, it doesn't, you know, lend itself to that type of activity, especially for that number of tables, that number of people, and that type of consumption. And the second is, you know, I hear you keep saying nonpartisan, but what I read here repeatedly is that you're gonna have a Republican there and you're gonna have a Democrat there.
Yes.
And that's it.
You want me to have an independent?
Well,
Because I don't know any independents.
I'm an independent.
Okay,
And
so am I.
So, and when I hear that, you know, nonpartisan, I mean, that's two parties represented. That's about as partisan as you can get
Right.
in this country of those two specific parties.
Well, I can't bring Bernie here.
And so,
Oh, that's true.
and so I just, you know, and I'm not real sure that University Plaza is, you know, the appropriate place for that type of degree of political dialogue, especially in that type of setting,
There was wine down Fridays there, and I think that was set
which
up
is a
well.
leisure-oriented activity, not a political sort of, you know, private entity, you know, process. I mean,
The Schmankel Stoop's 25th anniversary.
which again is a leisure-oriented activity, not a political sort of, you know, a dialogue activity. And so for me, I'm not certain that
Is it
that's.
because of the setting, or
I
like,
think part of it's the setting. Yeah, I mean, I think of like Blues Fest or August-Oktoberfest, you know, in the parking lot, and I'm trying to sort of picture that type of seating arrangement and level of activity in the University Plaza. I mean, I don't know how many people, 90 tables of, you know, was it 90 tables of 10 people a table?
Yeah, the pictures,
Yeah,
I mean, there were
so
two
900,
different layouts in your.
You know, 900
packet.
people in that space, I don't know what that is.
Do you
I'm
think
thinking
of it
like
as-
crab and beers, and I gotta tell you, I have more problem with the crabs in there than I do the beer, simply for logistical purposes I mean, it's mostly a grassed area. It just seems a little odd to me. It seems like there's better places downtown to do it outside, than that, and.
where did you
you
have
know.
it in your Baltimore City locations, just
Place
in
called
comparison?
Palladium, and I had it, and another one we had one at the high school.
At a high
And-
school?
Yes, and it was on grass.
It was on
It was on grass. I thought, because I looked at some other locations here in Hagerstown, but to start for the first time here in Hagerstown, I looked at the demographics, I looked at, compared to Frederick County and Baltimore and Howard County. University Plaza is perfect because it has a fence, so I can control the crowd more. And in terms of budget, I mean, I don't have a large budget, but, you know, and we're doing this 4, 5 different counties. And then next year, and we're gonna do it in every county during the next year. But I have to remind him that I'm a nonprofit, so it can't be political. This is not political education. You know, we have politicians come to speak to a lot of our nonprofits that I belong in, and they come and speak, talk about certain issues, and those organizations don't have problems with politicians come to speak. But we just have to make sure that we cannot endorse or promote any political candidate or any politician whatsoever. One of my friends is tied to Bernie Sanders, and they wanted me to think about bringing them in the state of Maryland, but you know, he's already running for president, so I can't even allow your Congress guy, I forgot his name, running for president, Delaney, yes. See, that's too dangerous, because that really straddles the fence, and it's too dangerous for me to have a political candidate come to speak. It would be good, you know, for them, but it could also cause a whole lot of things that I don't want to deal with in terms of political distress. You know, people in Charlottesville, you know, I don't want those kind of issues and people coming trying to tarnish our event. We're going to talk about soft issues, healthcare, prescription drugs, social, Medicaid, Medicare. We're going to talk about taxes.
Republicans and Democrats are pretty passionate about those soft issues.
Yeah, but that may be so, but the soft issues, Like my mother and my friends, they Democrats, but they want to know what's going on about taxes. They want to know what's going on about health care. And a lot of my friends, they don't even know the issues. The only thing they know is I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. I'm a vote Democrat or Republican. Okay, tell me about the issues. They can't tell me one thing that one party or the other did that's going to benefit you. So I know.
No, it's fine.
So I just want to make sure that folks are really informed on the issues and not partisan politics. And you're right, both parties are pretty much the way you described it, but we have to do a better job as citizens and organizations to make sure that people are educated on the issues, period.
Austin, where you stand?
I just had a question on the, for an all-day event like this. What normally would be the budgetary impact on the police department for overtime and that type of thing?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that, I mean, we've already met with Lieutenant Fetchu, and she already weighed in and gave him a cost, a price,
Okay.
a tag on that, which was like $2,800 was her, I think,
Yes.
her initial
Not asking
estimate.
for any funding for anything.
No, he's not asking for any funding.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a problem with it, you know, if there's no funding being asked for, it's your event, and, you know, I understand Kristen's concern with the crabs in the grass, but, I mean, people have picnics all the time with crabs in grass, I think. So, I mean, I think it's fine,
I think,
right?
I think it would be an interesting event to have downtown, because I would like to see, more discussion amongst the residents from various areas of the city, various demographics and everything, maybe getting together that don't normally get together, and I think it would be a good catalyst for starting that kind of discussion, maybe.
Lou?
I'm fine.
Okay,
There you go.
there you go.
You're good.
Thank you, look forward to
Okay.
it.
Yeah, it'll be on the,
And all of you all will be invited. And
Thank you.
Thanks.
I was sold at
Good,
crabs.
thanks, yeah.
Sorry?
She was sold in crabs.
Oh, you saw with crabs, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't drop any in the grass.
Yes. Bibs. One has to have a bib.
Main Street, Hagerstown Business Relations Work Group, Focus Group, summary. Hello.
Evening. Good evening, everybody. How are we doing?
Good.
Good evening. Main Street Hagerstown's Business Relations Work Group conducted a series of business focus groups in October with 23 businesses out of the approximately 275 businesses we have in the Main Street. Paul Fry is here with me. He's the chair of the Business Relations Work Group as well as president of the Chamber of Commerce. He's going to provide an overview of the feedback that we received from those businesses, which we have also summarized in your packet as well. So if you wanna-
Good evening. Absolutely. Thank you. And hopefully you've had a chance to read through this. My goal is not to read through line by line. We presented to Mike and his team about 6 weeks ago. I will just refresh everyone's memory. We did something similar in March of 2016 for the business groups. And then June 2017, we talked with consumers and potential consumers. So this is third in the series, and fourth in the series, we're looking at students to talk to next. And the goal of doing these focus groups, our role is to gather information. We're not judging what people are saying. We're just gathering information, not reporting as true or as accurate. So that's the report you have in front of you. The highlights I'll mention, and I think I mentioned to Mike and his team when we met, there was positive feedback on a number of the city's initiatives moving forward, in particular Urban Improvement Project, the Maryland Theater, BISFA, the work USMH, and Cultural Trail, so that was good news. There was some pretty strong feedback that there is so much good news that we should do more branding as a city. We should share the good news, and we should have a real good plan, PR and initiatives to reinforce all the positive attributes, not only for the city residents to offset some of the naysayers, but also to folks who might relocate to the city, either as residents or businesses. And I know some of these initiatives you're working on as a group, but I just wanted to reinforce that.
And Shelley and I did not pay you to say that. We just want to put that out there.
That's right. Well, as some of you might recall, I've been preaching this for 2 years personally, but I think, again, I was one of the moderators. Our goal is not to judge or make people say certain things. We're just writing stuff down. There was also positive feedback and less negative feedback on the permitting and enforcement piece. I know Kathy Marr's happy to hear that. 2 years ago, we had some issues, but some resolutions been made and some improvements, so we wanted to note that. And lastly, there is either reality perception about enhanced or more negative behavior downtown, less police presence, and concerns about safety. Again, either whether it's real or perceived. So that's the high-level view. I've picked out a couple things in the report just to talk about. First of all, we talked with 23 different people representing 23 organizations. 13 were nonprofits, 13 were for-profit or businesses, 9 were nonprofit. As a reminder, nonprofits, it's a federal tax status, doesn't mean they can't make a profit. So even though they're nonprofits, they have some good feedback. They're located downtown, they do their work downtown. And then 1 church. Again, around the branding and PR messaging, business owners are reported being attracted to open a business downtown Hagerstown. They wanted to be part of the revitalization. That was one of their desires, to be part of what's happening. And we think that could be a good branding PR message. There is a law firm downtown. They have all their staff in Hagerstown, but most of their lawyers are in Towson. And so when calls come in, they actually get answered here in Hagerstown, and they answer on behalf of the law firm. So that might be an opportunity to promote that they're here because of the availability of help, and also it's not as expensive to do business here in Hagerstown. Some target marketing. A lot of these folks have said they are downtown, or they found space downtown because of either word of mouth, realtors, or people already doing business downtown. So that may be another opportunity for the economic development folks to target them as marketing opportunities so they can bring their resources here. Let's see here. Number 6, from your perspective, is there an area under the city's control that, if improved, would make a positive impact on your business? It seems, again, this is reported, that a number of the focus group participants think the city is not doing enough to market the positives, and we could do more there. Nearly all the suggestions for improvements that are under the city's control and would likely make a positive impact on downtown businesses focused on image regarding businesses, loitering, drugs, and crime. Permanent improvements are not going to happen until this image is addressed. So you do all the marketing you want, you can do all the incentives you want, but if we're not looking at this image, their feedback was it may be for naught. The recommendation was to focus on this as a one of your strategies, this image, and to again fight back against some of these negative perceptions or realities, and what are the positive things happen downtown. One of the recommendations is on page 5, number 9. There was some really significant feedback that there didn't seem to be as much police presence since we did this 2 years ago, and that that's a good way to positively impact the safety perception or reality, is to have police presence, and understanding that, I think I heard today, and there were 19 officers down. There was 2 years ago a fair amount of police presence downtown, whether it be bike officers or foot patrol. That's been reduced because of manpower, and that was a recommendation. More police presence would be helpful to help people feel safe, and also for the folks who might want to behave differently. I think we all behave differently when we see a police officer walking around, either in a rearview mirror or walking around downtown. So those are the highlights. Again, I want to thank Amanda and the rest of the staff. She's been a nice connection for us to keep this process moving forward. We had good participation, and we'll look forward to doing more of these, and I'm open to any comments or questions you might have, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability.
I just have one question, and you see this theme sort of repeated on a number of the questions, so I'll just go back to the responses to question number 6. From your perspective, is there an area under the city's control that, if improved, would make a positive impact on your business? And you go down 2 paragraphs, and I don't know whether this is something that's being stated or assumed. but it says nearly all the suggestions for improvements that are under the city's control, including such things as vagrancy, loitering, drugs, and crime. I'm curious whether that was the respondents stating their position and their belief that these are under our control, or that it's something that they're saying simply, if they are under your control, we'd like you to assist in addressing it. I think folks are under this misconception that you know, that we have, you know, this governmental authority to address in some definitive manner things like vagrancy, however you want to term it, and loitering.
So it could be they think you have control. What the message was pretty clear to me is, and there's been some improvements that when this is done in October, and some of the folks who were living under the bridges are no longer there. And, you know, they were saying as you come into the city, you know, it's not a good thing to see. What they were saying at the time is what the city is doing, I'm saying the city, and they're part of the solution too. What the city is doing is not working. And so whether you have control or not.
So federal, I mean, we've heard very clear from our attorneys.
Councilmember, I understand all that, and so what they're saying is, how can we address those issues with all the constraints we have? Because it's an image issue. So again, I'm not arguing with you. I just.
Oh, no, I'm just curious whether folks that responded to this, in their responding, have a clear awareness of the fact that we don't control or have authority over nonprofits that provide, you know, specific services, that we don't have control over, you know, individuals' decision, you know, to
live on the street or
meander about, you know what I mean? I think that there's a disconnect
the folks
there.
I think the folks we talked with understand that. I think maybe like you, they have a frustration of what can be done, given the constraints and given the work being done. So the answer, I think, is they understand it. Most of them do, and maybe that's part of the messaging. Maybe that's part of the PR.
But you made a good point. You know, you said that, you know, we are many officers down, and it is a presence of safety, you know, and if we don't have that, you know, we do kind of have control over, or some control over having police presence and
those things we do, yeah.
Right, exactly. So if we have that, maybe the other things would be less obvious. You know, we do have control over the incentives. We do have control over, you know, how we can bring businesses and attract them. So to layer that kind of behavior with more positive behavior. So I think that you're right. We don't have control over whether someone decides to be homeless and walk about the streets. Absolutely. But what we do have control over is how we can attract more businesses and portray a positive image that reduces that appearance.
Well, there's the other problem that we need to focus on, and maybe one of these focus groups like this could come up with some suggestions, because I don't know what the answer is. But several of the comments here, they mentioned that homelessness and behavior of vagrants is disruptive, and that's a key negative thing to development of business downtown. Yet what attracted you to open a business in downtown Hagerstown for nonprofit services? Proximity to those served. So which came first, the chicken or the egg? And you know, how do we deal with that whole issue there? And I think that's, again, that's a very difficult question, and I think, though, until we answer that, we're not going to get much further than where we are.
Well, again, I want to reinforce that a number of these folks are downtown. They want to be part of this revitalization, and they do want to be part of the solution. They recognize, I know, some of the constraints. I think this is good dialogue, not only this information, but today. And I do know that if you did some outreach, they'd be happy to talk with you. And we've told every one of them that all 6 of you, well, really 7 or 8 of you, are very accessible. And if you have concerns or feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the work that you do. This reminds me of a conversation that Austin, Shelley, and I had with Chief Kiefer and Sergeant Canode and Jill, maybe a conversation to revisit, was having like a host mainstream downtown safety presentation and do several of them so the employees of downtown businesses can talk to our sergeants and, you know, how to feel safe, how to be assertive, what to do if you think you are witnessing a crime, or just really tips from the police department and what they would like to portray to the businesses. Because we had a presentation from some downtown businesses that said, you know, if I witness something, I'm not sure what to do, or if I think I may be witnessing something, I'm not sure how to handle it. And maybe if we could do some sort of educational presentation, you know, have them download the See Something, Say Something app, really promote that, and different tips that the police department may have, and encourage people to go out and get their lunch downtown, walk downtown, take their breaks walking downtown. So the more foot traffic we have, the better as well. So maybe that's a conversation we should revisit.
And we've
to
done
try
some
to
of that
set-
with the downtown folks. The chief and Eric have been very helpful, and they've been
Good.
engaged, and
Yes.
we don't expect that to change. And so we've had those conversations with them as well.
So maybe we can make that like a big community type event, like, hey, here, you know, we are 19 officers down, but here's how as a community we can come together to help that and that help overcome that stigma as well.
I've always thought that the businesses downtown could form their own neighborhoods first group kind
Right.
of thing, you know, and protect one another in a way, you know, and I don't know how that would look or what that model is, but almost ambassadors to, you know, as businesses, you know, working together. I mean, crazy concept.
Well, we've talked about it, and it's a great idea, and some of these business owners, there's one or two people in the business, and they're all really busy. It's all we could do to
Absolutely.
get people here, and then when we have these presentations, really good presentations, we might get 10 or 12. So we'll keep doing it. Again, we'll keep the message going, and if 10 people show up, that's 10 more than last time, so.
You guys
again,
do great work. We
This is
appreciate
valuable
it.
information.
Well,
Yes.
thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to present it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
One comment, April 22nd, Monday, is Earth Day celebration at the University Plaza for Parks and Recreation, geared for children and parents. So if you can attend, please do.
Shelley.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the Facebook post, and I am not a Facebook fan at all, but regarding the Jonathan Street area and what transpired over the past couple days regarding the demolition of some of the projects there, some of the homes. I'm not going to complain about what was said or anything like that, but I think that what a solution could be, what I've noticed, and is there is no representation for the African-American community at this table currently. There's no directors. So to prevent this kind of thing happening in the future for historical buildings or non-historical buildings, I mean, maybe there's something that we can come up with, like a Black Heritage Commission, somewhere where there's a voice for, you know, for them to be able to feel like they do have a voice. Much like the Youth Advisory Council, I think that sometimes we make decisions on, you know, certain areas and demographics or whatever without having a voice at the table. And I don't know if that's the answer or not, but I feel as if it gives them an opportunity to feel as if they're being heard. So just I don't think that, you know, that community is, I know that there was a point in time where they said something about that area being you know, under the historic district. And I don't know if that's the answer. That seems a little highly, I don't know, there's a lot of rules and stuff that goes along with that, so that might be a little bit difficult. But I do think that we could possibly form a commission in order for them to feel like there's some representation.
And we have a tentative date to have a town hall
Yeah.
about it. I mean, we've talked about it in email for the 30th. We just have to confirm it when and where. I think having a community discussion, because all you have to do is ask. Now, you said yesterday, we don't know what we don't know, and
Right.
that's the truth. I mean, some things we just don't know. So if there's an issue, all you have to do is email us. I can promise you all 5 of us respond very quickly and get staff involved if something needs to be involved. There doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a big mess of frustration and anger. All you have to do is reach out. We're not right about everything, and there are things in this community we don't know. So if there's a situation like that, call us or email us, and I promise you we'll do our best to help you find a solution.
But I'd like to also point out that I would like to give a negative shout out to some of the Facebook trolls that, once again, are, the only thing I can say is attempting to incite rather than look for a solution. And when people try to stay up till 11 o'clock at night and answer questions and try to present alternatives and present solutions and try to work toward a common good solution, and that is just taken and around and around and around and around, and there is no good solution. And so, and this is, you know, I don't think that the people that do this, they do not represent the black community. I don't think the black community has a representative that represents the community. It's a community, just like there is no one person that represents the North End. There is no representative of this community. So, you know, I take a little bit of offense to the people who represent themselves as if they represent the black community, and I don't think they do. And I take offense to the fact that they try to stir people up and try to present the facts erroneously to basically put the city in a bad light. And once again, just trash Hagerstown. Let's just trash it. Let's just drag it through the mud. And it goes on over and over and over again. So, you know, I think probably the best thing we could do if we wanted to do something positive for Hagerstown is we all take a pledge to delete Facebook for the rest of the year. Just delete it. Take it off, and let's get our information other ways and deal with public communication differently, because it's not working. It's dragging people down, and it's dragging the city down. My 2 cents.
Shelley, I did from you.
I just want to echo, you know, what Emily said. I think that we have to meet them where they're at. I think that it's important for us. I mean, you know, when we are here in this council meeting, you know, I'd like to say that everyone in the city is watching us intently and hanging on every word that we're saying, but I'm pretty sure that's not happening. So we rely on the media to give, you know, the message, and sometimes, you know, we need to control the narrative better. And I think that by having town hall meetings on a regular basis and meeting them where they're at, if they're not gonna come to us, I think that it's important for us to go to them, and that's fine. And I'm willing to do it if it's just 2 council members or all of us having different meetings. I just think that if we want to change that, because people aren't going to delete Facebook, then we have to be in front of them and having the conversation like grown-ups, face to face, and explaining.
And I think all of us have been very receptive, all of us, when
I do
someone calls
too.
it. So I don't know what the answer is to get in front of people so they feel like they're heard, other than.
You think these people, are you done, Shelley?
That's it.
I would say a couple things very briefly. One, there is a representative of the Jonathan Street community if they want to speak. It's known as the Honor Triangle Community Group. We have a Neighborhoods First group. If you take a look at the Neighborhood First groups around the city, they are very active in their community, including this group. That's 1. 2, our citizens don't have to turn off Facebook. We do.
Agreed.
True.
I don't have a problem with these people. I don't have a problem with these trolls. You know, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference and ignoring. I refuse myself to even read them. Facebook is not the place nor social media to try to get things accomplished. It is a matter for people to hide behind their hatred. They're not looking for solutions. They're just looking to create problems. And the more we engage them, the more you take care of it. It's like a client comes to me and says, I got this problem with my neighbor. I want you to write him a nasty letter threatening him. And I know that what the neighbor is doing, there's never going to be a solution to it, except that if the lawyer writes the threatening letter, they know they've pushed the button and they've gotten under their skin and they'll just continue doing it. The more we respond to these people, the more you encourage them to do it. I mean, I can't believe that we've heard tonight some discussions because of Facebook posts about changing what we plan on doing because people posted things on Facebook. I can tell you, as soon as you start changing your decisions as a city council because what somebody posted on Facebook, you might as well just get in Facebook and join them. That's not the way to legislate. You all can do it. I can tell you I don't. I'm on Facebook frequently. I have a wonderful high school class that's on there, including Emily's dad. I have friends. When it comes to politics, when it comes to local politics especially, I'm not interested because the people that are posting the things that you're talking about, they're not interested. They're just interested in causing trouble. That's it.
I want to clarify, though, the conversation began about the demolition of the project by a conversation that I had several weeks prior to the Facebook post. So it wasn't that the Facebook post initiated any of this conversation. I was having conversations with someone that isn't in that community but is representing the historical value of the community in actual conversations on the telephone that he reached out to me, and the Facebook post was posted.
But I love someone who puts themselves forward as not living in the community but representing them.
Agreed, I agree.
So you stirred the pot, started it up a couple weeks ago, okay.
For
Got
once,
it.
no, I
Got it.
didn't.
For once it was
Austin?
I said Monday.
Kristen?
I mean, I completely agree with Lou. I think I typed that in an email today and probably deleted it and typed it in another word, and I just couldn't say it the right way, but I think you can't legislate through social media. It just will never work. You legislate at this table. But as it applies to going out, I'm happy to go out, into any part of the community and have those neighborhood meetings, and I completely agree. Each of us live in a certain part of the community, and we're just not completely familiar with every part of this community at all times, what's going on. So I think that's important. But I will tell folks very clearly before I would go out to those. And I don't care whether it's the one in the 500 block of Summit Avenue. I don't care if it's the one in the 300 block of Jonathan Street or the one right up here off of Washington. We have to remove blight from this community where blight exists, because that is a physical representation of what the citizens, of what businesses, of what tourists and folks that come into this city see and take away, in their memory bank. It isn't the 12 nice houses that you see on any one of our residential streets. It's that one that's in such a deplorable condition that you remember after you leave that street. And so for me, I just think that it is paramount that whether it's the one over here next to the library lot that's now become a beautiful park, we have to remove that blight, that physical impediment to revitalizing this community, and we have to replace it with something positive. And the people that are going to benefit from that most directly and most immediately are the people that live on these streets in these neighborhoods and have to stare at that garbage day in and day out and have to find something to feel proud about living in their community and looking at.
No.
I don't have any.
Me neither. We're adjourned. Thank you.